everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff,
Yes, sir.
what the hell do you think you're doing?
That's, it's I've heard that it's a good way to make a conversation, make small talk, is to ask people questions about
Yeah.
themselves. I'm like, what the
I
hell's
was,
wrong with you?
yeah. And the reason I started that way is because we decided tonight to talk about insults.
Or in
And
particular, our favorite insults
yes,
throughout
and
history.
I'm reminded of it reminds me of a time some years ago I was teaching a class, not an official, at just a informal class on courtesy. And people came in and I said something like that. What the hell's wrong with all of you? And it was meant as, and nobody was laughing. I said, that was meant as a joke. It was not being serious. It was not courtesy, see, humor.
This is
Anyway,
opening humor for a
yeah,
lecture.
exactly. Um, so yes, so insults, our favorite insults. And this led to some interesting research and thought about insults in light of the virtues, which is the
Yes.
context, the framework within which we discuss everything. Before we begin, though, what the hell are you drinking?
What the hell am I dreaming? Well, what's it to you, buddy?
Yeah, yeah.
I've actually opted for a beer this evening. It is the Founders Brewery Dirty Bastard Scotch Ale.
Oh,
Very nice, robust, full-bodied, nice caramel notes. I had not had it before a few nights ago, and this is the remainder of the six-pack I bought at the time. But I'm really enjoying it, and will
cool.
probably
Yeah,
visit it again in
looks good.
future. And you, sir,
I
what
have
are you enjoying?
a whiskey sour,
Huh.
um, complete with egg white and
Mhm.
some bitters floated on top. I used Motor City Gas's, it's a Detroit distillery, Motor City Gas, their new version of essentially an Irish whiskey. It's called Barley Legal.
Clever,
Um,
clever enough to justify drinking.
yeah, and it's pretty good. So
Very good.
yeah,
Well, cheers.
cheers.
That's good.
So as we were thinking about insults, I think one of the things that we admire is a clever turn of phrase, a witty turn of phrase.
Yes.
But I don't like to insult people. I don't like ad hominem attacks. I certainly don't like attacks on someone's appearance. I in general prefer to keep my discussions to the subject. I mean, rather than the person. That's is after all one of my rules of courteous discourse. You stick to the subject. But I do like a witty turn of phrase.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before we went on, and that comebacks and a witty rejoinder, as it were,
Yes,
seems to be more palatable to both of us in general.
yes. A comeback is, after all, a verbal self-defense. And we've talked about self-defense before as ethical. And a verbal self-defense seems just as ethical as a physical self-defense. And so I looked at different categories of insults. And there's certainly the ad hominem, and there's let me look at my list here of categories. There's somebody's appearance, their sexuality. There's a backhanded compliment, which is a kind of insult. There's family, the classic yo mama, but
Right.
those are that whole yo mama so stupid, your mama so ugly, are part of the competitive insulting game known in
Roasting.
yeah, roasting. Well, and there people are willing, people are participating. They're not, I think that's another thing. If you're competing in a fight with somebody as a contest,
Right.
it's not a fight, it's a sporting contest, then that's fine.
Sure.
And a roast,
It's different than getting cold cocked on the street.
right. And so the entertainment known as the dozens, which was in between like the 5th and 16th century known as flighting,
Flighting. I think it's flighting.
flighting.
Flyting.
Those were intentional. It was a game. It was an entertainment,
Yeah, right.
exchange of insults. And that's one thing. And then there are gestures, insulting gestures, the Welsh archers. That's a story. Hey, we still have our fingers.
But
So
even
there's
that,
anatomies, that kind of
you
anatomical
bring that up,
gesture.
and but even that is a response. The
Yes,
is a
yes,
response to something in particular.
yes. And there's certainly a lot of Yiddish insults, and those generally are about behavior. They're not about appearance. They're generally about behavior. The typical, like a jlob is not a slob physically, it's an insensitive, a gauche, and ill-mannered person. They're, a kibitzer is a meddlesome,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So it really is for me the comebacks that are the most, those, as I went through, those are the ones that are my favorite. The comebacks.
There's a justice to them in
Yes.
a way
And
it appeals.
it's they're the ones that also I think are my favorite are the ones that are delivered in the moment. They're
Yes.
right then. And I found there's a French term for a comeback that you think of later.
Oh, I know what that is.
Yes.
L'esprit d'escalier.
L'esprit d'escalier.
The ghost on
De
the stairs.
l'escalier. Yes. The spirit on the stairs, that you're going up the stairs and you think of it then. And it's great that there's a term for that, because I think we've all had that. That
Oh,
I
like when
should,
he's that moment where you go, oh, I should have said.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So I also developed, as I was going through, since we sort of agree on comebacks, um, a ranking of comebacks. And my first number one is the one that's delivered in the moment rather than l'esprit de l'escalier. And the next doesn't seem like a comeback in the traditional sense, but it's the calm, rational explanation that drives the person who insulted you crazy. And this
All right.
is based on something my mother once said. Um, she said, because my mother worked in retail for a long time, and she went from, it was this grand old department store, and she went from the um, bridal department to the maternity department to the infants and children department. So she saw some of the same women for a long time. And this was before the term bridezilla was,
Right.
but she certainly knew many of them.
Before the film Godzilla, so it's not no surprise.
And she said that the meaner somebody was, the nicer her response was. And then in a very conspiratorial way, she said to me very quietly, because it makes them so angry. The nicer she was, the madder they got, the crazier they got. And so I think on calm, I've seen that before. It's like, yeah, somebody's losing their shit,
You're
and
right.
you reply, and they want to evoke a response from you, and you don't give it to them. we talked about stoicism as the not what people think it is of emotionless Spock kind of thing. It's that you have recognizing you can't control your environment, but you can control your reaction to it. Um, and so that is, I think, a great kind of comeback. And then I think the next for me is the comeback that the person doesn't realize is a comeback and thanks you for it.
That that's the epitome, I think,
Okay.
of the clever rejoinder, where
Yes.
or it takes them a moment. It sounds like a compliment, and it takes a moment to realize, wait,
Hey, hey, wait a minute. Yeah. Um, and I've got some examples of those. And then there's and this is sort of a side to that sequence, the generic insult that's really a commentary rather than an ad hominem. It's not an attack on a person, but it's a social commentary or maybe a movie or theater review. But it's easier to write a negative one than a positive one. So
yeah,
that, so that's my categorization.
okay.
Okay.
I think those are valid.
Okay.
Um, I have kind of organized
Oh,
mine.
thank you so much.
Yeah,
There's
like
also sarcasm, which is in its own category.
um, yeah, and I kind of organized mine sort of chronologically, since it was insults through history was our sort of original thought on this.
Mm,
But some of them are political, some of them are from Hollywood, some they're from
yeah.
all over the place, and I suspect some of them were rather obscure. I remembered hearing them and not knowing who they were from, and had to dig a little bit to find out who they're from. We'll get into it, but
Okay.
um, and I think we both found certain names coming up over and over again.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
uh, Oscar Wilde,
Oscar Wilde, Dorothy Parker,
Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill. Yep.
Um, there were some that were surprising to me as I was searching these, and I actually seen them before, but they become some of my favorites. Beethoven,
Oh, okay.
uh, Sir John Gielgud, who I love Sir John Gielgud, but he has a great quote in here.
There was actually a commercial with John Gielgud, and he was I'm pretty sure it was Gielgud. He's a butler walking through an art gallery
Okay.
serving drinks. And I think it was a wine commercial. He's serving drinks and he walks past one very emo, black clad artiste who's commenting on his own work, saying, "Would you believe I painted this it was a day or a week or something?" And Gielgud says, "Yes, I would," and keeps walking. Um, yeah, and it fit with
Oh yeah, his upper
his
class
and
English
persona sort of thing. Yeah,
condescension of
right.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I also included. I'm going to include in the comments here a a link to a Martin Luther insult generator, which I found at first hilarious, but it's a he's really just, and I've never read Luther's 95 Principles,
No.
but it's just taking shots at the clergy. Just, I
Yeah.
mean, like we've talked about before, stuff that would get you punched in a bar
Yeah.
is was the level of literary philosophical uh, language that he's using. It's just all, I mean, just calling out clergy, calling them pigs, calling them the devil's spawn. I mean, it was really
Yes.
not clever stuff.
We've speaking of punched in a bar, I'm not saying we've been punched in a bar, but people have said things to us
Oh,
that
certainly.
in another day, uh,
In my
another
misspent youth.
it would have resulted in
Fisticuffs.
fisticuffs. Yes. Um,
Right. So, so I will start this.
okay.
And I thought, why not start with the great bard himself, William Shakespeare,
Yes.
from As You Like It. I desire that we be better strangers.
Uh,
That is classic.
very good. And I'll go straight to Winston Churchill and their differences of thought about who made the original comment to him. It's sometimes thought that it's a female member of parliament, usually thought, but who it is, accounts differ. And who says, Winston, you are drunk. It's a state affair, a state dinner. So,
Mhm.
Winston, you are drunk. Once more, you are disgustingly drunk. And he says, my dear, you are ugly. And what's more, you are disgustingly ugly. But tomorrow I shall be sober and you will still be disgustingly ugly.
The other half of that is usually attributed to Lady Nancy Astor.
It's also sometimes attributed to Bessie Braddock
Oh,
because Lady Astor, there's another Lady Astor one,
yes.
where she says, Winston, if I were married to you, I'd put poison in your coffee. And he responds, Nancy, if I were married to you, I'd drink it.
Yes.
So,
My
um,
so I'll jump to Churchill. I've got one from Churchill that I like. I've heard that one over and over again, but one I think was a little less. I thought a little less um, vulgar, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
But and it's between him and George Bernard Shaw, and
yeah.
their attention
It's on my
telegram,
list
I
too.
think,
Yeah,
and he says, Shaw sends him a letter and says, "Have reserved 2 tickets for opening night. Come and bring a friend if you have one." And
yes,
Churchill responds, "Impossible to come to first night. We'll come to second night if you have one."
yeah,
That is the best sort of verbal judo.
yeah. It's really
Uh,
good because there, there's a
there,
kind, I think there's a kind of respect in some of those exchanges.
well,
Um,
he and Shaw were actually sort of friends,
yes,
so it was
yeah,
a kind of a saying his friend saying, "Come if you have a friend,"
yeah. And him
and
saying, come
yeah, so
your
it was
play
a
doesn't close after
excellent.
opening night. Yeah. Um, which actually reminds me of a personal example I can give. It was at a tournament where I was doing quite well in the SCA, our armored medieval combat sport tournament. I was doing very well, um, and at one point, one of the knights I knew came over to me and said, "I really hope that when I'm your age, I can fight half as well as you do." And I said, "Sir, I'm sure you will. You fight half as well as I do now." And and
Very good.
that was one of that was I was particularly pleased with that one. So um so
So,
um
I've got another one from I'm going to jump back chronologically a little bit
okay.
to Ludwig van Beethoven, the great composer, said to another composer, "I like your opera. I think I will set it to music."
Wow.
Yeah, and that I don't know that there was any back and forth there, but that is an absolutely stunning
Yeah. Yeah.
insult.
Wow. Um, oh, that reminds me of one. I have to look up who said the one I'm thinking of. Um um yes. Give us another one while I think this up.
Um,
Um
this one is probably not very famous, but I think speaks to our particular audience very well. Um, a British officer um, challenged Robert Surcouf was a French officer, and oh, I seem to have dropped the name of the British officer. But he says, "You French fight for money," and this is a prisoner being held by Robert Sarkouf, a French
Mhm.
officer. And this British prisoner says, "You French fight for money while we fight for honor." And Sarkouf replied, "Each of us fights for what he lacks most."
Wow. Okay. Um, the one I was thinking of is often credited to Dr. Samuel Johnson, but like so many quotations, there were earlier versions that were then simplified, streamlined, paraphrased, and attributed to somebody to give them more credibility.
Right.
So it may not have been him. And it was a commentary says your manuscript is good and original, but what is original is not good, and what is good is not original.
It sounds like a student paper.
Yes, I did once get an email from a student requesting what's known as an override to allow them to register for my class that was already full, but I could admit a certain number more. And the email was, I'm paraphrasing, but was, hey,
Hey,
let me into
hey,
your class.
really? That's the entire request?
It was about, that was about it. There was a little more. And I was feeling a combination of snarky and generous. So I wrote
Mhm.
back and patiently explained what a business communication email, the structure of it, with a proper salutation and a request and information that should be provided and closing and the structure of how to do that. And I said, actually, the original email was longer, and I marked it up. It's like,
Okay.
punctuation wrong, you spelled this wrong,
Incomplete sentence, blah, blah, blah.
that sort of thing. And sent it back along with the directions and said, try again. And to the students' credit, they responded with a well-constructed, properly formatted, proofread, well-written email asking politely for permission to enroll in the class. And I
And you
said, yes.
denied me. Oh,
No, I said yes,
okay.
because they, I set the expectation for the class in that email.
Yeah.
They knew what to expect. They still requested it, and they could follow directions, and they demonstrated that they could write when they had to. So may have had somebody do it for them, but anyway, so I said yes.
All right.
So yeah.
Um, Another quote kind of along this line is uh, President Lincoln on one of
Mm-hmm.
his political candidates, probably perhaps Stephen Douglas, since they said so much to each other, and he can compress the most words into the smallest idea of any man I ever met.
Oh, so good. Um, Another Dorothy Parker. Um, the and the report was that she was going to supper, and they both were Parker and a young debutante who opened the door for Parker and
No.
said, "Age before beauty." And Parker replied, "And pearls before swine," and
Right.
walked in. Um, which I thought, again, the rejoinder, um,
Yes.
pretty good. Um, Parker's social commentary was also her, or theatrical reviews were biting. I think sometimes she enjoyed her own ability to turn a phrase and be sharp more than she valued an honest review.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. The classic is she runs the gamut of emotions from A to B, which
Yeah.
was reportedly, she said about Katharine Hepburn, who clearly went on to a stunning career.
Right.
If all the girls attending the Yale prom were laid end to end, I wouldn't be at all surprised. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's just straight up being mean right there.
Yeah.
Um, well, talking about actors and actresses a little bit, Sir John Gielgud on Ingrid Bergman in Casablanca. She speaks 5 languages and can't act in any of them.
Oh my goodness. Gielgud, did I mention the commercial he was in?
Yes,
Yeah. It was Paul Masson
Paul
wine.
Masson. Oh, yeah, a pedestrian wine with
Yeah,
an
at best.
aristocratic
Yeah.
spokesperson.
Yes. So yes. Let me see.
Sometimes the insult some of these I found there's no particular target for the insult. I found it,
Yes.
but it was a sort of a generalized. Sometimes it's a social critique. Um, uh, there's a couple of those I've got here. One I thought from an unexpected source from Pope John the 23rd, and this is just kind of a funny response, and it's I don't know if it's insulting, but I thought how unexpected was Pope John the 23rd is asked by a reporter, how many people work in the Vatican? And he said, about half.
Oh, yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
expect that kind of sort of good wit from a pope.
Yes. So at one point in Henry the Fourth, Part Two, Falstaff is being insulted,
Falstaff.
referred to, Falstaff. And it's not something that one generally would say to a person in person, but so it's I guess the literary insult is another category.
Yeah, true.
Um, he is described as that trunk of humors, that bolting hutch of beastliness, that swollen parcel of dropsies, that huge bombard of sack, that stuffed cloak bag of guts, that roasted Manningtree ox with pudding in his belly, that reverend vice, that gray iniquity, that father ruffian, that vanity in years.
Hmm. That is that of Falstaff or Falstaff speaking? I don't
That's
remember.
of
Of
Falstaff.
Falstaff. Okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah,
a lot. Shakespeare does that occasionally, where he just kind of like we were talking about with Dorothy Parker. He just fell in love with his own phrasing and just
yeah, yeah.
ran with it.
Well, and he made up so many phrases and words too.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Uh,
and I think it compares with, I mean, sometimes it says a lot about who the character is. Shakespeare uses the way a character insults another character to reveal something about who the person was giving the insult.
yes.
Thou art unfit for any place but hell is from Richard III. And so it's very direct as opposed to the very lengthy discussion or description of Falstaff. Um,
There's another Oscar Wilde quote. Now we talked about how we it's not uh, it's not legit to insult someone about their appearance. However, I will I will I am very critical of a person's attire because that's a choice. That is
you
a
know,
choice made.
we recently had an opportunity to observe the change in the rules describing cocktail attire.
Oh, oh yes.
Cocktail attire now apparently means for women what it always did. They dress nicely. And for men, they wear their cleanest ball cap backwards. And
Well,
apparently that is cocktail attire now.
right, and a fresh pair of cargo shorts. I mean,
Yes.
men in public nowadays think it's appropriate to dress like a 6-year-old child, and it bothers the shit out of me.
Yes.
Um,
The men who proudly say that they don't have a tie or,
yeah, well, I hate suits. I've never worn a suit.
yeah.
Okay,
Um,
you've never gone to any. You've probably never been invited anywhere where a suit was necessary.
yeah.
But I only say that to preface this other Oscar Wilde quote that, and again, it's I never saw anybody take so long to dress with such little result. I thought that's a
Yeah.
very Oscar Wilde, and Oscar Wilde was not what you'd call a sartorial, uh, you know.
Well, he wasn't Beau Brummel, but he had his own style.
Well, and but I think we could almost put Oscar Wilde's style hinged primarily on disrupting
Yes.
current standard. That's
Yes.
he was conscious of not dressing in an appropriate fashion. He did it purposely,
To,
show his
yeah, to,
disdain for it,
yeah.
which I
Um,
don't care for. I think I think that's a type of sort of hubris.
yeah. And I think even it's one of the problems I had with the first of the Sherlock Holmes movies
Yeah,
with Robert Downey Jr. because he dressed like Oscar Wilde.
they
He
dressed him
was,
like Oscar Wilde. Yeah,
and Holmes, if you read any of Conan Doyle's descriptions of Holmes, Holmes absolutely knew the social niceties. He chose when and where to ignore them, but he knew he dressed properly in the city, in the country, in the for all circumstances. He did that. He didn't dress inappropriately for that. He knew exactly what to do, and that was not how Robert Downey Jr. was directed.
no, and you know, I would like to
The
see.
entertaining movie, but you know,
Yeah, I would like to see, and I'm sure it's out there somewhere, and I haven't delved for it, but um, a sort of psychological breakdown of Holmes's neuroses and the fact that, in my estimation, from my readings of Holmes, is that he he wore all clothing to Holmes was a costume for a specific purpose.
yes,
So going out into a polite society, he dressed in an appropriate way because it allowed him entree and it gave him certain advantages and so on. When he was
exactly.
out in the country, he dressed practically. When he was in disguise, he dressed to a T to fit
Yes,
within the role he was trying to play. And I think that was him all the time. He was playing a role to
yes,
serve a purpose.
I agree. I completely agree. I think the only psychological examination of Holmes in popular culture is the 7% Solution, which was a great book and a really good movie too.
I've never seen the
Um,
movie.
oh, really good,
I didn't
really
realize it
good
was
movie.
who played Holmes in the movie.
Holmes was played by Nicol Williamson, and um, Sigmund Freud was played
Hmm.
by Alan Arkin.
Alan Arkin. Interesting.
It was great because yeah, it was a really good movie. But it's comedic, but
Well, yeah.
and Vanessa Redgrave was in it too. So yeah, it was really good. Good movie.
Okay.
Directed by Nicholas Meyer, who wrote the novel.
Okay. Okay.
So
Well, that would usually
yeah.
improves a movie.
Um, from The Lion in Winter,
Oh, so good.
John says, "Poor John." Who says poor John? Don't everybody sob at once. My God, if I went up in flames, there's not a living soul who'd pee on me to put the fire out. And Richard replies, let's strike a flint and see.
Yeah. Anthony Hopkins has some, as Richard, has some great lines in that film.
Yes.
But my favorite is the to again to John in their original meeting, and he says to him, uh, "We do not know each other well, little prince. I beg you to believe my reputation." Another Oscar Wilde.
Hmm.
This is speaking to someone, and to me, this is the type of insult where you're speaking to someone and you say something that you know is an insult, but given your interaction with them so far, you're not sure if they will get it.
Yes. Um,
And we talked about that as uh, having some walking away from someone still smiling,
yes.
and they having left the room, they realize that they've been insulted.
If then,
If then,
um,
and this
and
is Oscar Wilde to, and I don't know to whom actually this is directed, but it says that the quote, and I think this is also from the importance of being earnest. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. And I could
um,
see some sort of a dumb sort of socialite saying, "Oh,
yeah,
why, thank you."
yes. As you said, the delivery,
Yes.
the old movie line smile when you say that. And sometimes if you do and you say it in a charming way, they don't realize what it is. And so I had an occasion once, someone I know wrote a book. I read it. Next time I saw them, they asked me what I thought. And I said, it's absolutely everything I expected it to be and more.
Very good. That's a fairly safe response to any sort of
Yes.
a request for a critique.
um, many years ago, yeah, it was, yeah. I think you know the book I'm talking about.
I know the book and the author you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
I some people I was working with, where I was working at an agency I was working at, said, we're going to the boss's wife's art show opening,
Ah,
and we don't know what to say because we think it's going to be bad. And so we came to you. I said, okay, first of all, look around the room very thoughtfully. You know, stroke your thin, furrow your chin, furrow your brow, and consider very carefully and nod very sagely and look at things and then say, it's your work is very evocative without being derivative, and walk away.
remarkably safe.
Yeah.
You can't say that about every. I mean, that arms them if they have a short interview with the wife, but
Yes.
and and it's almost too bad in that they might actually get something out of it. Who knows?
Yes.
I think arming them with the just in case was wise.
Yes. Well, I think there's also there are occasions when, and we value um, veritas, we value truthfulness,
Mhm.
but there are occasions when that can be in conflict with compassion. And
Yes.
so what do you say? How do you get out of a situation where you don't want to insult somebody? What is it? And a gentleman never offends anyone unintentionally.
Right.
Uh, so there are ways. Oh, let's find a time to talk in more depth. There's so much I want to say.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that traps you into some sort of future
Well, yeah,
debacle.
if you have a relationship where you can then say, would you like to hear my thoughts? And on occasion where somebody asks me my opinion of something, and it's opinion, not a conclusion, because conclusions, as I said, are based on data and
Right.
reach a conclusion. But an opinion is often a matter of expression of taste. However, you and I both have opinions of taste based on reasons. We have reasons for those.
Right.
So if somebody asks me that, I'll say, okay, do you really want to hear what I have to say? Do you really want me to tell you? Do you want a critique, or do you want or not?
Hmm.
And at that point, almost invariably, they say yes. So the question then is, how do you offer a critique without it simply being insulting? Now, critique is a specific process
Oh,
that
yes.
one learns in art school, design school, any kind of creative endeavor. You learn critique. And it's not simply, I like it, I don't like it, it sucks, it doesn't. It's a critical analysis of the work, the creative work, music writing, dance, poetry,
And,
theater, anything, art, anything.
and
And
often, and if I may interject here, when
yeah,
I'm
please.
faced with a similar situation, a lot of critique is based on intent. What did you
Yes.
intend? And that's kind of a way to deflect, I found giving a direct response to them and say, well, I'm not sure I get your intention. Could you explain it to me further?
Oh, that's really good. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get them talking, and now every artist will talk about their work.
Yeah.
But go ahead. So go ahead.
No, and then you can talk about their intent, which is very good. Talk about their technique. You can talk about the concept. You can talk about, there's a lot of composition. There's so many different things you can talk about. Um, I think, for example, and a critique is different than a review, like a theater
Yeah,
review,
sure.
where too often in theater and movie reviews, the the skill, performance, technique of the person performing or doing the thing is not separated from the decisions made by the director of the thing.
Right. Yes. A good review separates those things.
Yes. And if it's theater, for example, the writing, the performance, the directing, the stagecraft,
Right.
the lighting, the costumes, the all of that. So there's so many different levels to it. And and so often it's all the emotions from A to B. And you never know. Sometimes you don't know, but it's a reviewer's responsibility to know how that performance came about, how it was directed, what was written, what was left on the cutting room floor, or what was omitted the
And
from
a
the
good review isn't just about what the reviewer thinks. It's about what they think the audience might get from it or not get from it.
Right. Right.
And again, a lot of that has to do with intent. I found you and I have both, over many years, had well, gifts of homemade beverages pressed upon us, uh, with all good intention and in a spirit of friendship and trying to
Yes.
make a genuine connection with someone. And you're handed a glass of something, beer, wine, food, whatever it is, and you're asked, "What do you think? Here, try this. Tell me what you think." And it's a horrible trap, but and this ties in with what you're saying, that if I just don't like it, sometimes I do, and you tell them why, and
Hmm.
giving them, I like this part of it. This is great. Um, this is the kind of thing I enjoy. Thank you. Bring me some more. I'd be happy to have it. But if I don't like it, my first response usually is, "This is not to my palate,"
Yes.
and that is me. I'm talking about me,
Yeah.
not about what you made, but that it does not suit my taste. And that, I
Yes.
think, is a safe kind of response to anybody. Make the response about you. And
Yes.
like the saying, I don't sufficiently understand it. I don't think my education in this is sufficient to give you the kind of answer you deserve.
Nice. Well, don't yuck somebody's yum. Don't harsh their buzz. Don't,
Yeah,
if somebody likes something, s- say, okay, great. Not necessarily to my taste, but
sure.
that's fine. Whereas if you simply call the thing vile or horrid or whatever, now you're saying it's the person who likes it will take that as a criticism of them
Right.
and their taste. So yes, I agree. Not to my palate, not to my taste.
And
Um,
things you are qualified to critique. I think it's fair if a friend is asking for honest feedback, like as you're
mhm.
pointing it out. Well, I like this aspect. I think you overplayed this aspect, or being honest with somebody, and a little give and take is good, and can bring you closer to somebody, a better understanding of them. But I think inquiring after their intent, like, here's a beer. Well, what type of beer are you trying to recreate here?
Yeah,
If you have some knowledge of the difference between, say, like I'm drinking a Scotch ale or an IPA or a porter, or you know, being able to say, or being able to say, "Ooh, I really like this. I like the smokiness of this." Find the thing you
thing that
like
you
about
like.
it.
Yeah,
Even if you don't like it, you wouldn't drink it again if you had the choice. But you can say, "Ooh, I'm not sure I would drink a lot of this, but I like this bit of it," and
I
give
I
them.
have found that there are some people who are actually proud of making something that is so unpalatable. It's it yeah. Well,
Well,
it's an acquired taste, which I hope never do acquire.
yeah, and we've
Yeah.
certainly we've certainly both encountered what I refer to as anti-personnel beverages.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yes. Um, um, there's a movie, um, Good Morning, Miss Dove, and it's takes place over many years. It's school teacher, Miss Dove, who is very um, firm with her students, but they learn to greatly appreciate her. And the movie goes back and forth between the um, earlier years when they're children, and then when they're grown up and she's not in good health, and they
Hmm.
come to see her and they gather outside her hospital window and say, "Good morning, Miss Dove," and they come in to see her individually. And there's one character who came into her class not speaking English, and then grows up to be a playwright.
Oh, hmm. All right.
And he comes to see her and to thank her for the education and hope that she feels better, and asks what she thought of his latest play. And she says, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly, she says something to the effect, with so many words to choose from in the English language, I do not understand why you had to choose those particular ones. Because it was some off color
Yeah,
word.
right.
So
She didn't approve of it, but
she didn't approve of it, but she was proud of him for his
yeah.
accomplishments. So it was a very um not an insult, but a very kindly delivered
Yeah.
criticism in keeping with her character. Um,
I've got another one here from Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. Um, Lots of quotes by Mahatma Gandhi. Not most of them are kind because that was what he tried to
yes.
be all the time. I was looking for some quotes from the Dalai Lama, but I thought that might be too politically charged, so I left that alone.
Yeah.
But Gandhi said, when asked, I'm sure you will recall this, what do you think of Western civilization? And he replied, I think it would be a good idea.
Uh, that's such a good one. That's such a good one. Um,
I apologize for that chiming that keeps. I'm
yes.
battling a virus on my computer and it pops things up on my desktop and makes a stupid noise.
Good morning, Miss Dove, 1955. After her admission to the hospital, town famous stern teacher Miss Dove nostalgically reminisces about her youth and about the pupils she taught over the years, starring Jennifer Jones, um, Robert Stack, um,
Robert
um,
Stack. Wow.
Robert Stack.
Young Robert Stack, I assume, is
Yes, and the Jerry Paris was the student who grew up to be a playwright. He played Robin Laura Petrie's neighbor in
oh,
Dick Van Dyke Show.
okay. Yeah, I remember the character.
Yeah,
It's interesting. It's kind of the I want to call it a sequel, but it's like after the sort of spate of 80s and 90s coach films and Stand By Me and
hmm
those types of things where the stern, you know, administrator or teacher takes over and eventually gains the respect of the
sure.
faculty
Yeah,
and the student body and all that, but by being absolutely draconian to start out with.
yeah. Samuel L. Jackson was in one. I mean, some of them are
Coach
based
Carter.
on true.
That was Coach
Coach,
Carter.
yeah, some of them are based on true stories.
Yeah.
I personally found the ones with Treat Williams as the substitute teacher very satisfying. Uh,
Well, the substitute are the ones
yes,
and the
yes.
original was Tom Berenger.
Oh, really?
Treat,
Oh, you're right. It was. And then
Treat
it
Williams did
was
the sequel.
right. Tom Berenger. Thank you. Yep. You're right.
Yeah, that I like that movie too.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a political sign of the times kind of a movie as well. But
Yeah, it was. And it was the characters were pretty much caricatures.
caricature, yeah, very
Certainly um 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 what was the one with Sidney Poitier as the teacher?
Goodbye,
Um
Mr. Tibbs.
no.
Oh, not
That
Mr. Tibbs.
um
Mr. Chips.
no. Mr. Chips was
Wasn't he a teacher in that one?
Peter O'Toole. No, yeah, but
Oh, all right.
let me find wow, can't remember.
Mr. Tibbs was Heat of the Night.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
But then
sorry.
there was a sequel. Um
Right. But I remember the one you're talking about.
yes. Where he was in because I remember "To Sir with Love."
Ah, okay, of course.
Okay, I remember the song, which is how I remember that. But it was, delinquents in the tough school, and you can't do anything with them, and he teaches them, and they respect him, um and yeah. So
So
yeah.
I've got a couple of two or three political quotes that I thought are relatively obscure,
Okay.
but I thought worth bringing up. There's a uh, James Reston of the New York Times referring to Nixon, former President Richard Nixon. He inherited some good qualities from his Quaker forebears, but by diligent work overcame
Yeah.
them.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's so good. That's one of those. The inside has a punchline, kind of.
Yes. Yes. Uh,
And this, and there's another one from Ed Koch to a kind of an obtuse reporter. And I think this is just a good kind of line to remember for general use. And it says, he said, this reporter was apparently pestering him over something he said, and Koch turned to him and says, "I can explain this to you. I can't comprehend it for you."
wow. Oh, that's really good.
Just a
Wow, I
good
can
general
see
response.
so many situations where I could say that.
Yeah.
Um, I think the political, I think that's another, well, Rustin's comment was very much like it was a criticism of a political figure, a public figure, and public figures, by virtue of being public figures, are somewhat um, become targets
Well,
for
sure, sure.
criticism.
And they
Um,
should. I mean, that's,
well,
you know,
yeah, sometimes I think it's unfair, the because they're not when they're not being criticized for the work they do,
oh,
but
well,
for
yes.
all sorts of personal matters, then it's not. I think it's not the interesting, appropriate, or useful. It's just
Yeah,
easy. It's just easy.
agree.
Um,
Muckraking and that sort
yeah,
of yellow
yeah,
journalism
yeah,
that's becoming more and more prominent.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that would be another subject to talk about. Excuse me, talk about um, the pressures on news media to get out stories to fill the 24-hour news cycle, no matter what the veracity of the story, where they now report on something that's rumored to be true rather than
right,
something that's confirmed to be true. So,
right. Or seen, yeah, right.
right,
I've seen new, supposedly, so-called news agencies reporting someone on Twitter said that someone else said this.
right.
That is the worst kind of,
Yeah.
it's not even journalism.
They're trying to fill the demand for content.
Right.
And I dislike the term content,
Yeah.
because
Well,
you can content is anything you can put in a container. It doesn't talk about the quality of it. It doesn't talk about the value of it. It's simply filler.
yes.
So
Well, and my lady wife, my beautiful and brilliant lady wife, refers to a lot of her business interactions as content-free communication.
yeah, yeah, oh
Um,
yeah,
so she now and I think we have done our diligence with this,
I think
and
we
I
have.
want to quote uh, something from I believe it was 1986. We're going to wrap this up with another political quote between two politicians that I think is absolutely timely if it gets if we put this up before Thursday night this week.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
Fritz, two, well, a Democratic senator from South Carolina, Fritz Hollings,
Yes.
was challenged by his Republican opponent, Governor Henry McMaster, also South Carolina, during a television debate, and I believe this in the mid 80s. The governor challenges the Democratic senator to take a drug test. And the senator responded with, "I'll take a drug test if you'll take an IQ test." And I think that's spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think I will forego watching the debate. I do think it was a good decision to cut off the microphone of whoever's time is not on,
Yeah.
because the um, kibitzing, the harassment, the
Yeah.
interrupting
Well,
was
the complete abandonment of decorum
yes, yeah,
required some kind of response.
yes,
Arbitration was necessary
yeah,
in previous debates. So,
yeah. I'm surprised it took this long for them to make that decision. So,
yeah,
um,
given the
I think
history.
we've covered this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So to recap, I think it's worth, as you stated at the beginning, was that we both of us sort of respect the witty rejoinder more than the cutting insult,
right,
unsolicited insult.
right.
So keep that in mind. Uh, keep a witty rejoinder or two in your pocket so that you are
Yeah.
not plagued by l'esprit d'escalier. And like and share and send us your ideas for topics. We'd love to have new, fresh ideas from you people. And until next time,
Be
be
thou.
thou,
Yes. Okay.
be thou,
A good night.
and true.